Matt Valley, and this is the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the research and insights pros that you trust. Today's guest is Sam Albert, who is the Chief Digital Officer for the company Behaviorally. Some of you may know Behaviorally as PRS INVIVO from back in the day, but they really are not just a pioneer, but the pioneer when it comes to applying behavioral science and biometrics to the field of consumer research. Some people think it's new, but Behaviorally has been doing this for decades. If you work for a research supplier, I just dare you to try to compete against these guys for package testing or shelf testing. They're the best in the business, that's for sure. So Sam is the classic story of sticking with one company and patiently climbing the ladder over time. So Sam started his career at PRS some 20 or so years ago.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We don't want to go too, we'll leave it at 20 plus. Anything more than that.
There you go, 20 plus. Fair enough. But I assume it's been quite a ride because you've stuck there all this time and you've risen to the Chief Digital Officer role. So very, very cool. I'm really excited to talk about that. But what I really want to talk about is your side gig, man. So we'll do that in a minute. And a whole lot more. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm super excited. Hey, whenever I get a chance to talk research, motorcycles.
Oh, yes. You tip my hand. Okay, so of course I'm representing as former motorcyclist myself. But okay, so let's start with the research stuff, Sam. So you get out of school, you're looking for a job. How'd you find PRS and tell us about your ride there?
So this is going to date me. This goes back to the 20 plus years, but it was an ad in a newspaper.
A newspaper ad. Wow,
a newspaper ad.
That's not.
I was working summers in college at a gas station on the New Jersey Turnpike, and then I was like, oh well, I'm not going to do this for forever. So let's see what's out there. And it was at that point there wasn't any LinkedIn or anything like that. Ad in the newspaper, looking for help. Just responded to the ad and got hired, and that was that. Basically, got pulled in, worked in pretty much every department we had. Started intern just shopping for products and do the duplication room at the time.
Right.
More traditional analyst role and so on and so forth. But it's kind of been like the mob, one of those things where you get in and then you try to get out, but it's really man, I'm telling you. So yeah, just grew with the business over the past 20 years or so. And the latest role, as you mentioned, is the Chief Digital Officer, where Alex came in probably about 2-3 years ago now. And at that point, I was actually on the account side of the business, managing some clients like Kraft Heinz and such. But I guess Alex saw some of the analytical or I guess organizational strengths that I had and started to move me more into an operations role. And that's actually how it transformed to the Chief Digital Officer role.
Okay, super cool. But it's been like the last 20 years. So I had a cup of coffee in the world of neuroscience in my career. Mm-hmm. So the last 20 years have been, there's so much has happened when it comes to behavioral science. So tell us a little bit about that ride. It's got to be fun.
Well, the behavioral science part actually has not changed all that much. Just if you're talking about foundationally what we're looking at, what we're trying to understand, you want to understand what people do. So basically what they tell you is great, but what they actually do is really telling and really what you're trying to understand or record, observe behavior. That piece has always been there, even back in the PRS days. Now there's just a formal name for it. We were kind of doing behavioral research before it was actual behavioral. So yeah, that it's been interesting to see the evolution of almost like the branding of behavioral research.
Right.
Now everybody is kind of adding that to their repertoire, but it's been the foundation of what we've done forever, even if it wasn't called that at the time. So the eye tracking per se, I mean, it's system one. It's what are people doing, and we're just observing that and recording and measuring that. then having your system two, which is your attitudinal interview. And those were the two core pieces of how we did research back then. And to some degree still do, just using different tools, better tools to understand behavior.
Yeah, it's actually almost like the industry finally caught up to the vision that your company had as its foundation. So it's really cool to see, and it has to have been really fun to watch that evolve and happen.
Oh yeah, it was a slow burn transformation over the years, and then
Right.
Last year, obviously, that was a watershed moment. And I mean, it was probably 5, 6 years ago that the industry started a rapid change, just being disrupted with technology and different players who focused in different areas. But and then you layer COVID in on top of that, and it's been truly disruptive. And for us, we see it as an opportunity. It was a direction we were already headed in terms of making the business more digital, leveraging technology to understand behavior, and intertwining the two so that we can help our clients, our customers, understand and make better business decisions in the end.
Sure. Cool. Awesome. Well, we've talked before, and that I used to ride motorcycles. I live vicariously through my brother, who's a philosophy professor during the week and a motorcycle mechanic on the weekends. But man, you're doing the thing for real. So tell us about your sort of racing career in motorcycles.
Yeah, so that's another one I kind of fell into. Actually rode little mini bikes and three-wheelers and whatnot when I was a kid, but it was nothing.
Around the neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. And then probably so growing up was pretty athletic, played basketball pretty competitively, played at college and whatnot. Hurt my knee and I could still play, but it was like I can't compete the way I wanted to. Always been competitive. And so I need something to fill the time. And I think I saw somebody riding a motorcycle or a video or something. I was like, you know what? We're gonna get back into motorcycling. That looks cool. On top of it, get all the chicks, everything, all of that kind of stuff. So I was doing a lot of street riding at the time, and I ended up ordering a part on eBay, just a random part. And I noticed that the shop that was selling it was local. So I said, can I come down and just pick it up rather than you guys shipping it to me? Sure, come in. I get down there, and it was like a bunch of dealers trying to get you to buy something from them. They're like, hey, you should think about getting off the street, come to the track, we'll give you a suit, you don't have to bring anything, we'll trailer your bike, so on and so forth. I don't know. Finally broke down, went to a track day, which basically is just a controlled environment.
Right.
Might sound familiar, but a controlled environment so you can ride safe, go fast and be safe. So that, and was hooked from there. So I started doing track days and wasn't really into the whole racing thing. I mean, doing track days seemed dangerous enough, but then racing, you had a bunch of guys trying to win, then it takes it to a level. And so, but had a bunch of buddies who were racing. They're like, oh, it makes you faster. You actually, it's not really more dangerous. It's again, controlled environment.
Sure.
And this is 2017-ish. I said, finally broke down and said, okay, I'll do a round or two, and got another taste. It was just another level of adrenaline.
Yeah.
When you grit up and you're trying to beat that guy next to you or catch that guy in front of you, it's a whole different experience. So did that 2017, a couple of rounds. 2018, did the full season, and basically started at the back, finishing, in the last 10. By the end of the season, I was running high to mid packish.
Okay.
2019, I didn't have huge expectations, but the first race of the season, it was in South Carolina, and get a good start. And I'm like, man, the front guys aren't getting away from me. I think I'm keeping up with them.
Yeah.
And then you just get a little bit of confidence, and next thing you know, I'm running at the front, and actually won 2 class championships in the region, and then 3 placed top 3 in another 4 or so classes. So did pretty well in 2019 and got bumped up to expert, which now is basically starting over again.
Yeah.
Slow
You're
guy's an
expert
expert. Yeah, the slow guy's an expert at fast. So
So how does this league work, or the circuit that you're talking about?
yeah, so it's called, well, at least the club or the the racing is CCS. It's Championship Cup Series. It's
Okay.
really there are some pro riders that do it on, I guess, when they have breaks in between, but it's primarily more like a club racing organization.
Okay.
Some of the guys are actually ex-pros. There's a guy from World Superbike who races in it. But it's literally almost like the minor leagues of motorcycle racing. And
Right.
a lot of up and coming kids, that's where they start. So you have a bunch of 14, 15-year-olds who are just,
Sure.
has no fear, just you basically, there's different regions that they have it in, and then they have amateur and expert class, and then different classes for the bikes. So there are classes where you can't do many changes to the bikes, classes where you can fully customize the bikes, different sizes just to make sure it's fair. So it's pretty intense. And then just getting out there and gritting up, and there's sprint races, which are shorter, and then TU races, which are about 25 minutes long. So it's pretty dynamic.
Now, what size bikes do you race?
Me, I'm personally on a 600.
Okay.
A lot of the guys, they're running 1000s nowadays. I personally like the middleweight, the middle size bike. It's enough power to scare you to death, but also it's agile enough.
Yeah.
So you feel in control of the bike versus the bike controlling you.
Yeah. Now, when we talked about this before, the thing that really struck me as you described this experience was you think of racing motorcycles as being really a physical type of exercise, and one that might take you a lot of time, right? So you're out on the track all the time, but your answer surprised me. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So if you think about motorcycle racing, number one, it's kind of like car racing or any motorsports. It's pretty expensive, and access to the track tends to be fairly limited. So you actually spend less time on track than you do off track. So between the prep, which is making sure the bike is ready, safe, secure, and just getting to the tracks generally aren't in city centers. They're hours and hours away. So you're driving, like I said, South Carolina or Virginia or whatever it is. And then just the time you spend on it, you're literally getting probably on a track day, you're getting probably 15 minutes an hour, and there might be 7 or 8 sessions. So, and that's in a day. So you're doing all of that work. So you have to do a lot of the prep work, both to the bike, but you mentally to get faster. So there's a lot of practice and mental exercises and things of that nature that actually will help you to get faster off the bike versus trying to do it all while you're on the bike. So you have to looking at track maps and determining what the optimal line is, looking at data, all of that comes into play.
Yeah, it's really interesting that it's so much more mental than I would have thought. You think it's just adrenaline and it's going fast. Sorry, I keep adjusting my computer. I had to plug in my computer, but so it's fascinating. So is there anything, thinking about your experience riding, is there anything you've taken from that experience that you've actually applied in your day job at Behaviorally?
Yeah, there's a ton of it. It's to me that there are a ton of parallels, a lot of things that, to your point, you can take one for one and apply to not just the day job, but to life in general.
Right.
So one of the biggest things, or most obvious ones, is isolating variables. If you're a researcher, you know the importance of that.
Yeah.
If you are into any kind of motorsports, you understand the importance of isolating variables, because unlike, say, a sport like basketball, where you shoot the ball and it goes in, and it's either it went in or it didn't go in. Motorcycle, it's more nuanced than that. Like to go 2 seconds faster, there are a lot of other things that are going on, and isolate the variables, you're unsure why you went faster or why you went slower. So making like a suspension change of raising the ride height or what have you.
Yeah.
Don't want to do that with a bunch of other things because you don't know which one worked or which one didn't work. So
Yeah.
that's a big one that parallels. The amount of work that I mentioned is probably another big one. Just the prep work, and it parallels in just getting the data or information. Sometimes it isn't easy. Sometimes you have to find ways, new and different ways to get that. Like for me, I actually installed some data collection software and hardware on my bike, so I can see where I brake, when I get on the throttle, how hard I'm getting on the throttle. So that's another one. Pushing beyond your comfort zone. So going 140, 50 miles an hour on a bike, it's not natural. So
Yeah. But it's awesome.
yeah, it's awesome. It is scary at times, but the adrenaline rush compensates for that. But it's something that you have to your head, okay, I'm going to push beyond the comfort zone. And again, you take that to your professional life, what we do. You don't want to always do the same things, or else you're going to get the same results. You have to push beyond, see how that works. Sometimes you fall down, it hurts. Hopefully you don't get hurt, but you have to push the line a little bit to really see results or see what difference it makes. And then one of the last ones is, I would say is, I guess there's no such thing as a perfect bike. It kind of relates to the same thing. You can have a bike that's really stable and fast in the straights, but it's harder to turn. So it's more of people sometimes think you just get on the bike and ride it, but if you set it up one way, it's going to hurt you in another way. So you have to find that perfect compromise that's going to get you that best result. And it applies to, again, professional and just life in general. It's always a little bit of a give it and take.
Yeah, cool. There's so much under the surface.
Absolutely.
Yeah, gonna get on a bike and drive it really fast, but there's just so much underneath it. So that's really cool. So you have spent, let's say, 20 years
Yep.
at behaviorally, right? So you're at one of the most innovative companies in this space. Curious to know from your perspective, what you see, when you look a little bit into the research future, what's there?
Yeah, there's a lot changing at the moment. I mean, I think that's fairly obvious, but I guess to start with, what the cost of entry has pretty much been the same over the past, I guess, 7, 8, 10 years, where obviously quality is one, but speed has been the other one that's been the key thing that a lot of our clients are looking for. Speed is speed. But again, I put that in the cost of entry bucket because everybody has to do that. Where you're going to separate yourself, and where you're going to be able to help our clients, consumers, basically make better business decisions. It comes from the understanding the behavior piece. And it might be a little bit cliche, but you really just need to figure out the tools that are going to be able to help you to get to that point most effectively, kind of like the bike. What's going to help you get there the fastest, kind of get into the corner and get out of the corner the fastest, but then also understand why it happened and have those diagnostics. So we're doing a lot of work tied to that, and that ties to the speed, but also having those tools. And just a little bit of shameless self-promotion, but that Flash.ai tool that we've recently launched that basically leverages AI, because again, that speed is a cost of entry. We need to understand what's happening early in the design process or whatever it may be. AI is a tool that basically is in its infancy with use in the research world, and it's that we're leveraging, so that we can then put the behavioral piece of it on top of that, so that we can essentially predict what's going to happen in market when you introduce a package, a design, a structure, what have you. So Yeah, it's definitely dynamic. There's more stuff like that we are working on. Again, just becoming more tech enabled versus being too heavily reliant on one piece or the other. Again, it comes back to this idea of that middle ground compromise being well balanced.
Yeah, that's it's really exciting. You know, having spent my career in this space, to see that we're getting much closer to accurate predictions forecasting,
Mhm.
right? Which has always been the real goal of what we do. In some instances, it's exciting, and it's not surprising to me that behaviorally is leading the charge. So always
Absolutely.
been there.
Got to push on the bike, got to push off the bike.
That's right. That's right. Cool. All right. So this is a podcast, right? So
Yeah.
we all consume media, whether it be podcasts or what have you. So thinking about what you're listening to and watching these days, either for professional inspiration or just for fun. What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things. So more generally, I cut the cord years back. So figured having 200 channels and watching maybe two of them probably wasn't the best investment. But so now I have this new thing where I'm very into documentaries, and
Right.
The newest genre of documentaries tend to be science ones,
Sure.
mechanics and things of that nature, stuff that I'll never fully understand. I spend a lot of time watching documentaries in any spare time that I have tied to that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Personally, from a podcast standpoint, one of the ones that I do spend, I leverage, and it ties more to motorcycle racing, but a lot of it, and it even talks a lot about life in general, is Ken Hill Coaching Podcast. He's actually a coach who coaches with this it's not an organization, it's a school actually, or he used to coach with this school, Yamaha Champion School. So
Okay.
he spends a lot of time talking about technique, relating it to the real world, relating it to the bike, obviously, so that you can go faster but safer. Again, leveraging those 2 points of those two key points. And then I guess professionally, again, a bit more of shameless self-promotion, but and it's not for me per se, but Behaviorally has its own podcast, Our Best Behavior, that Matt Salem hosts, and he does a great job just talking about digital shopper growth. So that's one that if you haven't checked out, you really do want to check out. So those would be, I guess, the top three, and then I don't watch a ton of TV. I'm a movie guy as well.
All right, super cool. Well, this is the Rock and Roll Research Podcast. I make no bones about that. And so we've been talking motorcycles, we've been talking research, but now we got to talk rock and roll. So, so I got to ask, I have to know, Sam, you're stranded on a desert island, right? You've got 3 records at your disposal for the rest of your days of your choosing.
That's a long time.
But it's only 3, right? So you can't get sick of them. What are those records?
So first, I'm old enough to actually have records, and actually DJ'd in college, and that's a whole other podcast. So that's a whole separate deal. But I thought about it, and I was like, well, you know what? It's not necessarily about the records. It's more about having the right genre for at least the 3 different situations that at least I see if you're stuck on an island. There's this
approached like a researcher.
Exactly. There's going to be, when you're on that desert island, the way you're going to need to be calmed in some way more. So,
Indeed.
So there's that, and I don't know if I would put Michael Jackson Invincible in the calming, but it's just kind of just inspiring, just nice to listen to. So
absolutely
Invincible, nice smooth music. That would be one, and then the second is just something to not get tired of, something you can listen to over and over and over again. And to me, this is a classic album with Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
Absolutely.
So to
Absolutely.
me, every song on that was a classic, and so something you can just listen to beginning to end. And then lastly, when you're going crazy and you just need something a little bit more aggressive, I went with and actually I had a
What was that? What was that?
Jay-Z.
Oh, Jay-Z. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
So when I needed something a little bit more aggressive
Yep.
to give me some inspiration to figure out a way off that island.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't
So,
think about it that way.
so
How do
I had
do
a
that?
hard time picking one, but Reasonable Doubt is probably my favorite Jay-Z album. But the Blueprints, all of the Blueprints, and then the Black Album, any one of those, throw them my way and we can go with it. But I'd probably pick Reasonable Doubt as the top one.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it.
Not really rock and roll, but you know.
Oh, no. That it works. It totally works. Totally works. Great stuff. Great stuff. Yeah, awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time, spending it with us here, Sam. I love your story. So much time at behaviorally, and what you're doing on the side is so cool. So next time you get to Dallas, you gotta hit me up and we'll head to the Haas Moto Museum, which is super cool.
Hey, and you should, if you're ever up north, come to the track, hang out.
Oh yes,
Love it.
I will take you up on that. So awesome. Thanks so much. It's been so much fun, Sam. Thanks so much. Rock and roll.
Absolutely. And